There have been a few things that I've shipped where I deliberately had them pull a spark plug or two because I knew that they would very enthusiastically rip the donuts in them. I bring a fair number of cars in from Japan. On average, I'd say probably bringing between 8 and 10 cars in a month of all varieties. I mean, not every single one is a $1 million car. They're all over the map. And I'll tell you, I'll get as excited about something that's 20 grand as I'll get excited about something that's 20 million. And this is the case in any transaction. I don't care where on earth you are. The first thing that you have to be comfortable with is the car itself. You know, is it a good quality car? Is it what it's represented to be? Is it what you need it to be? And in Japan, that can be rather difficult because there are a lot of cars that are represented as being low kilometer cars that just aren't. I will say on record that there is a lot of odometer fraud that goes on, a ton of it. So you really have to be careful. And you get what's known as a CarVX report, which is like their equivalent of Carfax. I mean, stuff like that can help. There are a number of things that you can do to help verify things or at least have some confidence. So like, for example, on a car that I'll be exporting where it's possible to do it, you get what's called a JEVIC report, which verifies that the kilometers are accurate to the best of its ability. In the same way that Carfax is a representation of what they know about that car to the best of their abilities. Someone could have driven the car off a cliff and put it back together again. If it wasn't reported to Carfax, they don't know. There's a limit to how much you can find out. But that's the same in Japan as it is here. That's a worldwide issue. That's not a Japan issue. First and foremost, you have to be comfortable with what you're getting. Then getting the car here, you obviously need a trusted resource for just transporting the car. Every single car that leaves there needs to go through what's known as a deregistration process, which is you're handing the license plates back. The license plates have to get handed back in. They get destroyed. The original registration gets canceled, and then they hand you export and deregistration paperwork. It's the paperwork that you convert that then gets converted into a title upon arrival in the United States. That is the formal ownership document in the same way that you have a French carte grise or a German Fahrzeugbrief. Excuse my terrible pronunciation, or UK V5. It's that the deregistration paperwork is that equivalent. Then you need to figure out how badly and how quickly you want your car over here, which in the last year has been an absolute nightmare. So there's a car that I just bought earlier this week that is a very, very significant car in AMG world. It's the baddest of the bad. I bought it for a collection of AMG cars that I have that I'm going to be putting together to sell as a collection. And then a really good client of mine got wind that I bought this car and persuaded me into selling the car to him. He wants the car here very quickly. And it used to cost me about $30,000 to fly a car out of Japan. At its worst, there was an F40 that I was buying out of Japan, and I was getting quotes between $125,000 to $150,000 to fly the car out of Japan. Now remember, $30,000 pre-pandemic, $125,000 to $150,000. So now the prices have come back to a comparatively reasonable $80,000 to $95,000 to fly that car, which is, by the way, crazy. It's not a reflection of car shipping. If it's not a car, it'll be pen ink. It'll be any number of other things that get manufactured in Japan that then get imported into the United States. It's just a question of space and weight that is occupied on a plane. But right now that space is at an insane premium, not just on planes, but in ocean freight. Then your next option is ocean freight. I used to get 40-foot containers out of Japan, which you can comfortably fit 2 cars into. If you really want to be aggressive, you can fit 3 and tilt one up. Not my favorite thing to do. My container cost used to be about $4,500. Now they have come down to a comparatively reasonable $18,000 to $20,000. But the thing that both ocean container freight and air freight offer is the security of knowing that your car is being truly handled in a white glove fashion, so if you're talking about investment grade and really, really specialty stuff. That's an option that I don't want to say you're limited to, but it's certainly one that'll help you sleep at night. And it's not to say that your third option is bad, but it's just not as secure. And option number 3 is what is known as roll-on, roll-off shipping. And that is where you literally have a dedicated car ship, and the car, as the name implies, rolls on the ship, gets strapped down, and then on the other end, rolls off, and you're done. Now, a roll-on, roll-off ship, it makes many stops along its route. In many cases, your car may get offloaded off of one ship and put onto another ship. And every time you move a car, you're introducing the possibility of risk. If something happening, something breaking, an enthusiastic dock worker deciding that it's time to go rip the donuts in your car, which there have been a few things that I've shipped where I deliberately had them pull a spark plug or two because I knew that they would very enthusiastically rip the donuts in them. But that shipping is still comparatively very cheap. I mean, pre-pandemic, an average car I was shipping was about $1,800 to the New York area. Now it's about $2,600, $2,700. So obviously it's gone up. But on a percentage basis, it's gone up on an absolute basis compared to going from 4,500 to 20 grand or going from 30 grand to 100 grand. Unless you absolutely need it, you ship row. And the reality is that most of the time the cars get there, no problem, no issue. It's how the vast majority of the cars that I'm bringing in get shipped. Part of the other reason, just to jump back to ocean freight and even air freight, is that just because you pay up for that container doesn't mean that your car is getting loaded on a container ship right away. You need to wait for a spot on a container ship to get on there. And at its worst, I mean, I was hearing reports of cars sitting in containers for 90 days before they got loaded in. So you would then pay all this money, have your car sit in a container, at the port near salty water, baking without any end in sight. And then it gets put onto a ship, which then takes 6 weeks if you're lucky to get to the New York area. Whereas the roll-on, roll-off stuff usually was getting loaded in. I mean, at its worst, there were times where we were waiting 6 weeks to get a car on, but now it's usually 2 weeks, cars on. That in and of itself is an elimination of risk. I don't want a car sitting in a container for 3 months. Anything can happen in 3 months. I mean, there could be a massive rat infestation that occurs. I don't know. To have the ability to get a car here quickly in this business is also very important. You don't want to have your money tied up sitting in another country on a dock somewhere for 90 days when it could be put to other use. So speed matters, and those are the various ways that you get it here. But then once it gets here, then you have to take all of your paperwork, your entry paperwork, so your customs, HS7, et cetera. You then take all that paperwork and bring it to your local DMV and get it registered. If you are in California, I feel very bad for you unless you're registering out of state, because California DMV is generally not going to accept any one of those cars. Pretty much everywhere else is relatively easy, and they'll usually require a VIN verification on the car for fresh imports, but that's not a Japan thing. That's a imported car thing. You get issued your title and then you get to drive your car here. Now, the one thing I'll say is that there are now certain states that are, and I will say persecuting the owners of cars of a certain displacement. So the cars that are known as K cars are being persecuted. And now there are certain classes of cars, namely the Mitsubishi Delica 4x4 wagons, that certain states are now revoking registrations because the cars are non-compliant with NHTSA regulations, which should not apply to cars over a certain age. So they should not be allowed to take away your registration. It's a state issue, not a federal issue. But regardless, they're revoking registrations, and it's incumbent upon the owners to fight back, which is you're literally fighting City Hall. For people who have certain types of cars, I would say this has become a threat and something that people in certain locations should exercise caution about. But things like Skyline GTRs are still being that are of legal age are still coming in no problem. Evos, STIs, all the enthusiast Gran Turismo cars of the 80s, 90s, and well, really up to 97, because that's what's allowed now. Those things are all still being allowed to exist here, no problem.
Right now, I need all of you to click the link in the description below and visit AutoTempest. Not only is it the best place to shop for your next car, but they're the ones that allow us to have so much fun doing Car Trek. I hope that you enjoyed Car Trek 8. We just released that on Freddie's channel, and now we're off to film 9 and 10. So seriously, we can't do it without you guys supporting AutoTempest so they can keep supporting VINwiki and supporting Car Trek. It's honestly where I start most of my days because it allows me to search all the major listing sites at the same time. I find my cars faster, much more easily, and I find them in the nooks and crannies of the internet that I never would have found without AutoTempest.